Maria Santos was only 24 when she left her small village in the Philippines to work in Dubai. For her, like so many other overseas workers, the decision was not born out of ambition for luxury, but out of sheer necessity. Her family lived in a modest bamboo house surrounded by rice fields. Her father was too ill to farm, and her younger siblings were still in school. Each month, bills piled up while food on the table became harder to guarantee. When a local recruiter offered her a position as a maid for one of the wealthiest families in Dubai, Maria did not hesitate. The salary, though modest by Dubai standards, was more than 4 times what she could ever earn back home. It meant her siblings could continue their education, her mother could buy medicine for her father, and perhaps one day Maria herself could open a small shop back in her village. The journey was not easy. She spent days preparing papers, going through medical tests, and attending brief orientation sessions where she was told to be obedient, work hard, and never cause trouble. That phrase stayed with her, almost like a commandment. She boarded the plane with a mixture of excitement and dread, holding tightly to a small rosary her mother had given her. When she landed in Dubai, the contrast overwhelmed her. Towering skyscrapers glittered under the desert sun, luxury cars zipped through immaculate highways, and the airport alone looked larger than her entire town. She was taken straight from the airport to her new employer's villa, an opulent mansion in one of Dubai's most exclusive gated communities. The villa itself was breathtaking. Marble floors, gold-plated fixtures, chandeliers hanging like frozen waterfalls. To Maria, it was like stepping into a palace. But this was no fairy tale. She was not there to live the luxury, she was there to maintain it. Her responsibilities were endless, cleaning rooms larger than her entire home, scrubbing bathrooms lined with Italian tiles, ironing designer clothes, and serving food at precisely the right temperature. At first, Maria followed orders diligently. She woke before sunrise, worked until midnight, and rarely had moments for herself. Yet she consoled herself with thoughts of her family. Every night, when she collapsed into bed, she whispered prayers of gratitude that at least her loved ones would have a better life because of her sacrifice. Still, beneath her quiet obedience, Maria began to feel the weight of isolation. She was far from home, surrounded by strangers who spoke languages she barely understood. The other staff, a mix of drivers, cooks, and guards, kept to themselves. Her employers treated her with polite distance, though their children occasionally snapped at her with the entitled cruelty that came from being raised in wealth. The villa's master, Sheikh, was rarely home. He spent his time in business meetings or traveling abroad. His wife managed the household with precision, giving orders through clipped phrases. But it was their son, Khalid, who drew Maria's attention. Khalid was in his early 30s, married, and already managing parts of the family empire. Unlike his father, he was often at the villa, lounging by the pool or entertaining friends late at night. He carried himself with confidence, the kind that came naturally to those who had never been denied anything. Maria avoided him at first, lowering her eyes whenever they crossed paths, but she could not ignore the way he noticed her. It started innocently, or at least it seemed so. A passing smile in the hallway, a question about her village. Once when he found her struggling with a tray of tea, he reached out to steady it, their hands brushing briefly. The contact was small, fleeting, but Maria felt her heart pound in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. She reminded herself constantly of the rules. Be obedient, work hard, never cause trouble. A relationship with the Sheikh's married son was beyond trouble. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Yet, despite her prayers for strength, Maria found herself drawn into his orbit. At night, as she lay awake in her small staff quarters, she replayed every glance, every word, every accidental touch. A dangerous thought crept into her mind. What if he truly liked her? What if her life could be more than servitude? Maria didn't know then that these thoughts, these fragile sparks of hope, would ignite a fire that would consume everything she had built. Her story was no longer just about sacrifice and survival. It was about to become a tale of passion, secrets, and tragedy, one that would end under the unforgiving silence of the desert sky. Khalid bin Hamdan had grown up in a world of privilege that most people could only imagine. From the moment he was born, wealth and power had shaped every aspect of his life. His father, Sheikh Hamdan, was one of Dubai's most influential businessmen, a man whose name opened doors and whose fortune stretched across continents. For Khalid, childhood meant attending elite schools abroad, learning English and French alongside the children of royalty, and traveling on private jets before he was old enough to understand the cost of a ticket. By the time he turned 32, he had already taken over several divisions of the family empire. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, Khalid carried a secret restlessness. On paper, he had everything. He was married to Aisha, the daughter of another prominent family. Their wedding had been a grand affair, a week of celebrations, gold jewelry dripping from every corner, fireworks lighting up the desert sky. It was less a marriage of love and more a contract between dynasties. The union had cemented alliances and strengthened family businesses. But behind closed doors, Khalid's marriage was cold. Aisha was elegant, educated, and respected, but their relationship lacked warmth. They spoke more about schedules and appearances than about dreams or desires. To Khalid, she was a partner in reputation, not in heart. Over the years, their distance grew, and Khalid sought distractions elsewhere. He became known among close circles for his indulgent habits. Exclusive nightclubs, hidden villas rented for secret parties, women flown in from abroad, all whispered about but never publicly acknowledged. For a man like Khalid, reputation was everything, but temptation was stronger. His life balanced delicately between public respectability and private recklessness. It was during one of his late evenings at the villa that he noticed Maria. At first, she was just another member of the household staff, quiet, efficient, almost invisible. But something about her presence stirred him. She was different from the polished socialites he usually entertained. Her innocence, her soft-spoken manner, the way her eyes flickered downward when she passed him, it was a humility foreign to his world of entitlement. One evening, after a dinner with business associates, Khalid found Maria cleaning the dining hall. The other staff had retreated to their quarters, leaving her to tidy up the mess of silverware and wine glasses. He lingered, watching her carefully align the cutlery. "You work too hard," he said casually, leaning against the doorway. Maria startled, almost dropping a glass. "It is my duty, sir." There was something in her voice, polite, restrained, but tinged with a vulnerability that made him want to hear more. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as though confiding a secret. "You remind me of someone I once knew, someone far from here." Maria didn't know how to respond. She offered a faint smile and lowered her eyes again, hoping the conversation would end. But Khalid wasn't finished. Over the next few days, he found excuses to cross her path. Sometimes it was a simple question, "Where are you from?" Other times, he offered compliments. "You have a kind face." At first, Maria resisted. She answered in short phrases, careful not to encourage him. But Khalid had grown up in a world where persistence always paid off. He began leaving small tokens, a box of chocolates placed discreetly on the kitchen counter, a silk scarf forgotten near her quarters. Maria returned them at first, frightened of being accused of theft. But eventually she accepted, her gratitude mixed with unease. Khalid's attraction grew, fueled by the very danger of it. The secrecy, the risk of discovery, the forbidden line he was crossing, it all made the pursuit intoxicating. To him, Maria was not just a maid. She was an escape from duty, a symbol of freedom in a life bound by expectations. Yet even as he pursued her, he felt the weight of his double life. His father would never tolerate scandal. His wife, Aisha, though distant, was proud and perceptive. And Dubai itself was a city where gossip spread like wildfire, where one wrong whisper could end reputations overnight. But desire clouded judgment. Khalid convinced himself he could control the situation. After all, he was powerful, wealthy, untouchable. What could a maid possibly do to threaten him? Maria, for her part, wrestled with conflicting emotions. Every time he spoke to her, she felt a thrill she couldn't deny. And yet, deep down, she knew the truth. This was not love between equals. It was a dangerous entanglement between master and servant, husband and outsider, power and vulnerability. Still, when Khalid smiled at her, when his hand brushed hers a moment too long, her fear melted into something she had never expected, hope. Neither of them could see it then, but their fragile, forbidden bond had already set a clock ticking. And when it reached its final hour, the desert itself would bear witness to a tragedy that no amount of wealth or power could erase. At first, Maria tried to convince herself that Khalid's attention was fleeting. Men like him, she thought, thrived on chasing what they could not have. If she kept her head down, the fascination would pass. She reminded herself daily of her family back home, of her father's fragile health, of the siblings who depended on the money she sent every month. "Do not forget why you came here," she whispered to herself each morning. But Khalid was relentless. What began as small encounters soon grew into deliberate opportunities. He timed his presence in the villa around her duties, appearing casually when she served meals or lingering in the hallways as she cleaned. He made her laugh with sly comments. He confided frustrations about his marriage, speaking to her as though she were the only person in the world who understood him. Maria's resistance weakened. There was a loneliness in her heart she had long ignored, the ache of being far from home, of living each day without affection or comfort. Khalid filled that void with ease. His charm, his attention, even his indulgence in simple conversations felt intoxicating. The first time he touched her hand intentionally, it was under the guise of helping her carry a tray of dishes. His fingers lingered just long enough to send a shiver through her body. Maria pulled back quickly, her face flushed. "We should," she whispered. "No one needs to know," Khalid said, his voice smooth, reassuring. "This is just between us." Those words, "just between us," would become their mantra. Within weeks, their stolen moments grew bolder. He arranged to meet her late at night when the household slept. Sometimes it was a whispered conversation in the dimly lit kitchen, other times a brief embrace in the shadowed corners of the garden. For Maria, every meeting felt like stepping closer to the edge of a cliff, but she couldn't stop herself from leaning over. The turning point came one evening when Khalid invited her to accompany him on an errand. She hesitated. It was against every rule, but he promised it would be safe. They drove out of the city, the glittering skyline fading into the quiet emptiness of the desert highway. He stopped at a secluded villa, one of the many properties his family owned but rarely used. Inside, Maria was overwhelmed. The rooms were filled with modern art, velvet couches, and glass walls that overlooked a private pool shimmering under the moonlight. It was a world completely separate from the one she knew. That night, their secret affair began. In the days that followed, Maria lived in two realities. By day, she was the obedient maid, silent and dutiful, invisible in the grand villa. By night, she became Khalid's confidant, his lover, the woman who made him feel alive. He showered her with gifts she never asked for: perfumes, handbags, jewelry. At first, she refused them, terrified someone would notice. But Khalid insisted. "You deserve more than this life," he said, pressing the items into her hands. Maria's heart battled her conscience. She knew she was risking everything: her job, her family's survival, even her safety. Yet in the quiet moments they shared, she convinced herself it was love. Perhaps, she thought, Khalid would leave his wife. Perhaps he would give her a better future. Hope, fragile and dangerous, began to take root. But secrets do not stay buried forever. The staff began to whisper. The driver noticed how often Khalid requested Maria to run small errands. The housemaids exchanged suspicious glances when Maria returned late to her quarters, her cheeks flushed. Even Aisha, Khalid's wife, felt the shift. Her husband grew more distant, more distracted. His phone buzzed late at night, and he brushed off her questions with curt answers. One afternoon, Aisha caught Maria alone in the garden, trimming flowers. She studied her with a piercing gaze. "You've been here a while now," she said slowly. "Do you like working for us?" Maria nodded quickly, eyes lowered. "Yes, madam." "Good," Aisha replied, but her tone carried suspicion. "Loyalty is very important in this house." The words chilled Maria more than any scolding could. She understood the warning hidden beneath them. Still, she couldn't walk away. Every time she tried to put distance between herself and Khalid, he found a way to draw her back. He promised her freedom from servitude, whispered about taking her away someday, painted pictures of a life where they could be together without fear. Maria wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. What neither of them realized was that their affair had already slipped beyond control. It was no longer a harmless secret between two people. It was a ticking time bomb, and every kiss, every stolen night, every whispered promise brought them closer to the inevitable explosion. And when it came, the fallout would be written in blood across the desert sands. The walls of the Sheikh's grand villa had a way of holding secrets, but they also had ears. And the longer Maria and Khalid carried on their affair, the more those ears began to whisper. It started small. The driver noticed when Khalid requested Maria to accompany him on errands no maid should handle. A housemaid commented that Maria's perfume no longer smelled like the cheap lavender she once used, but something far more expensive, the kind that came in gold-trimmed bottles. Even the cook raised an eyebrow when Khalid entered the kitchen late at night, asking for Maria under the pretense of needing tea. Servants lived in silence, but they watched everything. In households like this, gossip spread like smoke, slowly, invisibly, until it filled every room. Maria felt it too. She could sense the glances that lingered too long, the half-smiles exchanged when she entered a room. She told herself it didn't matter. As long as Khalid protected her, she would be safe. But in the deepest corners of her heart, she knew danger was tightening its grip. One evening, the first crack appeared. Aisha, Khalid's wife, walked into the living room and found Maria dusting near the bookshelf. Her eyes fell on Maria's wrist, a delicate gold bracelet with a small diamond charm. Aisha recognized it instantly. She had seen it displayed in Khalid's study weeks earlier, part of a collection of gifts he often purchased for clients or family. "Where did you get that?" Aisha asked casually, though her eyes were sharp. Maria froze, her heart pounding. She fumbled for an answer. "It was given to me, madam, a gift." "By whom?" Maria hesitated, but Aisha's silence pressed harder than any words. "My cousin in Manila," Maria whispered finally. Aisha didn't reply. She only smiled thinly and walked away, but suspicion had taken root. Over the following weeks, Aisha began to watch her husband more closely. She noticed how he slipped out of bed late at night. She saw the way his eyes followed Maria in the hallways, lingering a second too long. She checked his phone when he carelessly left it on the table and found deleted calls, erased messages. Her chest burned with betrayal, but she was not the type of woman to lash out immediately. Aisha was calculating, and in Dubai's high society, appearances mattered more than emotions. To confront Khalid without proof would only weaken her position. She needed certainty and leverage. One night, Aisha confided in her closest friend, Layla, over coffee in their private lounge. "You suspect your husband is unfaithful?" Layla asked, her eyebrows arched. "I don't suspect," Aisha said coldly. "I know, I just don't have the evidence yet." "Then watch the maid," Layla advised, lowering her voice. "It's always the maid. They come here desperate, and men like Khalid they can't resist." Aisha sipped her coffee slowly, her silence more telling than words. Meanwhile, Maria lived in constant fear. Khalid reassured her often, "No one will find out, Habibti." But his confidence only deepened her anxiety. She felt the weight of Aisha's gaze on her, heavy and unrelenting. She avoided eye contact, worked harder than ever, and prayed silently that her secret would remain hidden. But secrets, once spoken into the air, rarely stay silent. The breaking point came during a family dinner. Guests filled the villa, laughter echoing across the marble floors. Maria moved among them quietly, serving drinks, her eyes lowered as always. Khalid, seated beside his wife, barely looked at her. Yet when Maria leaned forward to pour wine, his gaze flicked up, just for a second, and locked with hers. It was enough, Aisha noticed. The look was brief, almost imperceptible, but in that instant Aisha understood everything. The stolen glances, the bracelet, the late-night disappearances, it all connected. Her blood ran cold, but she smiled through the evening, her laughter light, her composure flawless. No one at the table could guess the storm raging beneath her calm exterior. That night when the guests had gone and the house grew quiet, Aisha confronted Khalid. "You've been distant," she said softly, almost tenderly. "Is there another woman?" Khalid stiffened, then forced a laugh. "Nonsense, don't be ridiculous." But Aisha's eyes were sharp, unyielding. "If I ever discover betrayal," she whispered, leaning close enough for her words to pierce him, "I will not forgive, and neither will my family." The threat hung in the air like a blade. Maria, listening from her quarters, felt her stomach twist. She knew Aisha's family was powerful, her reach extending far beyond the villa walls. This wasn't just a jealous wife's warning. It was a promise of consequences that could destroy them both. And yet, when Khalid slipped into her room later that night, brushing her fears aside with kisses and empty promises, Maria let herself believe him once more. But Aisha was no longer blind. The secret was unraveling, and soon the price of their forbidden love would be demanded. Aisha had always known how to wait. Patience was her strongest weapon, sharper than anger, quieter than rage, deadlier than any outburst. Once her suspicions about Maria solidified, she decided she would not confront her husband blindly. She would catch him, and when she did, there would be no escape for either of them. For weeks, she set her plan in motion. She quietly instructed the driver to report Khalid's movements. She asked the housemaids subtle questions about Maria's whereabouts. She even slipped a tiny recording device into Khalid's car, hidden beneath the leather seats. What she discovered confirmed every suspicion. There were nights when Khalid's voice could be heard murmuring in the car, low and intimate, speaking words meant for a lover, not a wife. One recording made Aisha's blood run cold. "Don't be afraid, Habibti. One day we'll be free." The word Habibti, my love. He had never spoken to her with such tenderness in years. Meanwhile, Maria's unease grew unbearable. Every glance from Aisha felt loaded, every silence too heavy. She tried distancing herself from Khalid, but he would not allow it. "Don't listen to gossip," he whispered one night, pressing her against the wall of the empty villa. "My wife suspects nothing. I won't let anything happen to you." Maria wanted to believe him, but the truth stared her in the face. Aisha knew. She could feel it in the way the woman's eyes lingered, calm but cutting. The final betrayal unfolded on a night Maria would never forget. Khalid invited her once again to the secluded villa outside the city. He promised it would be safe, that no one would notice her absence. But someone had noticed. As they entered the villa, hand in hand, Aisha was already waiting. She had arrived earlier, slipping in through a back entrance with the driver's help. She positioned herself in the shadows of the living room, her face hidden, her heart pounding with a mixture of fury and grim satisfaction. Maria and Khalid laughed as they walked in unaware. He kissed her cheek, whispered something that made her smile. They moved toward the couch, completely blind to the storm waiting in the dark. Then the light snapped on. Aisha stood before them, her face pale but her eyes burning with cold fire. The silence was suffocating. Maria froze, her breath caught in her throat. Khalid's face drained of color. "Aisha," he began, his voice trembling, "this isn't what it looks like." "Don't insult me," Aisha spat, her calm mask cracking into fury. "I have eyes, I have proof. You dare bring her into our home, into my life." Maria fell to her knees, her hands trembling. "Madam, please, forgive me, I never—" "Silence," Aisha's voice thundered, echoing through the villa. "You think I don't know what you are? A servant who forgot her place, a thief who thought she could steal what is mine." Tears streamed down Maria's face. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Khalid reached for his wife's hand, desperate. "Aisha, listen to me. I love you." This meant nothing. "Nothing," Aisha's voice cracked with venom. She turned her glare toward Maria. Then why does he call you Habibti? Why does he sneak away at night like a criminal? Why does he give you gifts meant for his wife? Khalid had no answer. His silence was louder than any confession. For Aisha, this was not just betrayal, it was humiliation. In her world, reputation was everything. And now, she was the wife made a fool of by a maid. "Do you know what shame you have brought to me, to my family?" she hissed at Khalid. He tried to calm her, but the more he spoke, the more her fury grew. In that moment, Aisha's anger turned dangerous. "You will regret this," she whispered, her voice low, deadly. "Both of you." Maria was escorted back to her quarters under the sharp eyes of the other servants. She cried through the night, her hands pressed to her mouth to muffle the sound. She knew her time in the household was finished. Worse, she feared what Aisha's family might do. Khalid tried to reach her, slipping notes beneath her door, begging her not to give up on him. But Maria no longer felt the same safety in his promises. She had seen the fury in Aisha's eyes, and she understood what power truly meant in this place. Aisha, meanwhile, began plotting her next move. Divorce was unthinkable. It would destroy her social standing. No, she would not leave her husband. Instead, she would make him pay. And as for Maria, there were ways to make her disappear without leaving a trace. The betrayal had been exposed. The game was no longer about secrecy. It was about survival. The house was no longer the same. What once felt like a gilded cage now resembled a trap slowly closing in on Maria. Every corner of the villa seemed to have eyes. The other maids, once friendly and warm, now kept their distance. Conversations hushed when she walked by. Plates of food were placed in front of her without a word. She wasn't just isolated, she was marked. Maria sensed it immediately. Aisha's wrath had spread through the household like poison. The first threat came quietly. One morning, Maria found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single photograph, a candid picture of her and Khalid in the garden weeks ago, their hands brushing, their faces too close to be innocent. Across the image, written in red ink, were 3 words. "You will pay." Maria's blood ran cold. She tore the picture into pieces, her hands trembling, but the fear lingered long after the scraps were gone. Khalid tried to reassure her, whispering promises of protection during hurried encounters. "Don't be afraid, Maria, she can't touch you. I'll take you away from here," he vowed, clutching her hand tightly. But Maria no longer trusted his words. She had seen the steel in Aisha's eyes. She knew the reach of his wife's family, wealthy, well-connected, merciless when shamed. Khalid might love her, but could he really save her from the wrath of a woman who commanded respect in Dubai's most powerful circles? The second threat was more direct. Late one night, as Maria slipped into her small room after chores, she found Aisha already inside, sitting calmly on the edge of her bed. The shock nearly knocked the breath out of her. "Madam," Maria whispered, frozen at the doorway. Aisha smiled, not kindly but coldly. "Do you know what happens to girls like you, Maria? Girls who forget their place." Maria lowered her gaze, her voice shaking. "I never meant to hurt you." "Silence," Aisha snapped, her tone sharp as a blade. She rose slowly, her elegant robe brushing against the floor, her presence suffocating. "You have already hurt me, you've humiliated me, and humiliation requires punishment." Maria's knees threatened to give way. "Please, I'll leave. I'll go back to the Philippines. You'll never see me again." Aisha leaned in, her voice a whisper that chilled Maria's spine. "You will leave when I say you leave, not before. And if you ever think of taking my husband with you—" Her hand gripped Maria's chin harshly, forcing her to look into her eyes. "You won't make it to the airport alive." Then she released her and walked away, leaving the room heavy with dread. Maria collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. That night she barely slept, every sound outside her door making her flinch. The third threat came not in words, but in silence. One afternoon, Maria noticed her phone missing. She searched frantically through her drawers, her bag, even the laundry baskets. Hours later, it reappeared on her pillow, but the gallery told her everything. Someone had gone through her private photos, her conversations with Khalid, her family messages back home. One image now stood out, a new picture of her, taken secretly while she slept, uploaded into her gallery without her knowing. She gasped, clutching the phone to her chest. Someone had entered her room while she was unconscious. Someone had stood over her, watching. Maria realized then that she was no longer safe. Not in the villa, not in Dubai, perhaps not anywhere. Khalid noticed her growing fear. She became quieter, thinner, her eyes hollowed with sleeplessness. He tried once more to calm her. "Maria, listen to me. We'll leave. I'll get you a new passport. We can fly to Europe, start over." But Maria shook her head. "She will find us. She said she'd kill me if I tried." Khalid kissed her forehead, desperation in his voice. "She won't touch you. I won't let her." Yet Maria could not shake the feeling that his power meant nothing against Aisha's fury. Love was not a shield here. It was the very reason she had been marked for destruction. Meanwhile, Aisha's plan was unfolding in silence. She didn't raise her voice again. She didn't confront her husband. Instead, she pulled strings quietly, speaking to her brothers, making calls in hushed tones. To her, Maria was already finished. It was only a matter of time. Maria's days blurred into nights of terror. Every knock at her door made her flinch. Every creak in the hallway felt like footsteps coming for her. She wrote letters to her family, begging them to pray for her, though she left out the worst details. She didn't want them to know how close the shadow of death loomed. And deep down, she began to understand. The affair was no longer a secret love. It was a ticking bomb, one that could only end in tragedy. Maria had always considered herself strong. She endured homesickness when she first came to Dubai, the long hours of work, the weight of being far from her family. But now, strength was no longer enough. The threats had hollowed her out, drained her of sleep, and left her trembling at shadows. Each day in the villa became unbearable. The laughter of Khalid's children reminded her of what she could never have. The glances of the other servants cut her like blades, as if they already knew her fate. And Aisha's calm, poised silence was more terrifying than her anger. It was the silence of a predator waiting to strike. The breaking point came one evening when Maria discovered a dead bird placed neatly on her pillow. Its wings were spread open, its tiny chest crushed. The sight made her scream until her throat was raw. She ran to Khalid, clutching the bird in her shaking hands. "She's going to kill me," she sobbed. "Don't you see? She's warning me." Khalid's face darkened with rage. He threw the bird aside and pulled her into his arms. "Enough! I won't let this go on. I'll take you away tonight. We'll leave Dubai. We'll start over." But Maria shook her head violently. "You don't understand. She's not just your wife. She's powerful. She has people everywhere. If we run, she'll find us. She'll kill me, maybe even you." Khalid kissed her hair, whispering desperate reassurances, but Maria no longer believed them. The dead bird had spoken louder than any promise. That night she made her decision. She would leave on her own. If she stayed, Aisha would destroy her. If she ran with Khalid, Aisha would hunt them both. But maybe, just maybe, if she disappeared quietly, returning to the Philippines without a word, she might live. She spent hours preparing in secret. She hid away the little money she had saved. She packed only a small bag, careful to make it look like nothing was missing in her room. She wrote one final letter to her family, tucked inside her Bible. "Pray for me. By the time you read this, I will be gone. I love you all. Forgive me for the shame I have brought. I only wanted to love and be loved." Her tears stained the paper as she folded it. But Maria was not the only one preparing. Aisha had sensed the shift. She noticed Maria's nervous glances, her forced smiles, the way she lingered near the phone lines. She ordered the driver to monitor her closely, though she did not explain why. She didn't need to. The driver understood. Maria belonged to the mistress's anger now. One evening, as Maria walked through the corridor with her bag hidden beneath her robe, she felt it, the gaze. Someone was watching. She turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. Still, her heart raced. Maria's breaking point came again when Khalid confronted her. "You were going to leave without me," he accused, his voice a mix of hurt and fear. She froze, unable to deny it. "Khalid, I can't drag you into this. She will destroy us both. Please let me go." His eyes burned with desperation. "Maria, I love you, don't you see? You're all I have. I won't survive without you." Her own heart broke at his words. She loved him too, but love was no longer enough. Love had turned into a death sentence. "You have your family," she whispered. "I have no one but God to protect me. Please let me leave before it's too late." But Khalid only tightened his grip on her hands. "If you go, she wins. If you go, I lose you forever." Maria pulled away, tears blinding her vision. "If I stay, I die." That night she prayed harder than she had in years. She knelt on the cold floor of her room, clutching her Bible, whispering desperate words into the darkness. "Lord, give me strength. Guide me, protect me." Her heart pounded with a single truth. Tomorrow she would try to escape. But somewhere else in the villa, Aisha was also awake. She sat at her vanity, brushing her hair slowly, her reflection calm and controlled. She smiled faintly to herself. Because she already knew. Maria thought she was planning an escape, but Aisha had already decided how and when the story would end. The night Maria chose to run was heavy with silence, as though the world itself held its breath. The villa had gone dark, the family asleep, the corridors still. Maria sat in her small room, her packed bag hidden beneath her bed, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She had rehearsed the plan over and over in her mind. Wait until past midnight, slip through the back servants, exit, walk to the main road, and flag down a taxi. From there, she would head to the airport, where she still carried her Philippine passport, tucked safely in her bag. She prayed it would be enough. She prayed she could make it to the plane before anyone realized she was gone. But even as she tiptoed through the corridor, she felt it. The walls themselves seemed to watch. The creak of the wooden floors sounded too loud. Every shadow seemed to shift. Still, she pressed forward, clutching her bag to her chest. She reached the back door. Her hand trembled as she slid the key into the lock. For a brief, dizzying moment, she felt hope, the freedom she had been craving. Then a voice sliced through the silence. "Going somewhere, Maria." Her blood froze. Standing in the moonlight, draped in a silk robe, was Aisha. Calm, composed, waiting. Maria's knees weakened. "Madam, Don't insult me with lies," Aisha interrupted, her voice steady, almost amused. "You thought you could sneak away, run back to your little island, leave me to carry your shame alone." Maria's throat tightened. "Please let me go, I don't want anything. I'll never see him again, I swear it." Aisha stepped closer, her eyes glinting. "It's too late for promises. You brought humiliation into my home. Do you know what humiliation costs a woman like me? Everything, my name, my children's future, my family's honor." Her hand shot forward, snatching Maria's chin, forcing her to meet her gaze. "And do you know who pays for humiliation?" Maria trembled. "Me." "Yes," Aisha whispered, "you." Before Maria could respond, two figures emerged from the shadows, the driver and another servant loyal to Aisha. They flanked Maria, blocking the exit. Her hope crumbled into despair. "No," Maria cried, twisting in their grip. "Please, I beg you." Aisha's expression never faltered. "Take her." The driver seized Maria's arms, dragging her toward the garage. Her screams echoed through the villa, but no one stirred. No one dared intervene. The car ride was suffocating. Maria was shoved into the back seat, wedged between the two men, her wrists bound with a scarf. Aisha sat in the front, her posture flawless, her silence more terrifying than any shouted threat. Maria sobbed, her voice breaking. "Madam, please, I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." Aisha turned her head slightly, her eyes cold. "You already disappeared the moment you touched what was mine." The car sped through the sleeping city, past glittering towers and empty roads. Maria's heart thudded as the skyline faded behind them, replaced by stretches of desert. The further they drove, the deeper her terror grew. When the car finally stopped, they were far from the city, surrounded by endless sand under a pale moon. Maria's legs nearly gave way as she was forced out of the vehicle. The desert air was sharp and dry, stinging her throat. Aisha stepped out gracefully, her silk robe fluttering in the wind. She studied Maria with a detached calm, as though she were a problem to be solved, nothing more. "Do you know why we came here?" Aisha asked softly. Maria shook her head, tears streaming. "Please, I don't want to die." A faint smile curved Aisha's lips. "You already knew this was the end the moment you betrayed me." Maria fell to her knees, clutching at the sand. "For the sake of God, have mercy. Think of your children, think of your soul." But Aisha's eyes were like stone. She gave a single nod to the driver. Maria's scream pierced the desert night as hands forced her back down. Her cries echoed, swallowed by the endless dunes, unheard by anyone who might save her. For Khalid, Maria's absence was noticed only hours later. He rushed to her quarters, finding her bed empty, her belongings gone. Panic gripped him as he tore through the villa, demanding answers. But Aisha only watched him with calm, unreadable eyes. "She left," she said simply, "like the servant she was." Her tone made it sound final, as though Maria had never existed at all. Khalid's heart shattered, but deep down he knew Maria hadn't left. She had been taken, and if he ever learned the truth, it would already be too late. The desert was merciless. Cold winds whipped against Maria's face as she knelt in the sand, her wrists raw from the bindings. She stared up at Aisha, who stood above her like a queen delivering judgment. The silence was broken only by the hiss of shifting dunes and Maria's ragged sobs. "Why," Maria whispered, her voice hoarse, "why can't you let me live?" Aisha tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Because women like us cannot afford loose ends. My husband, my children, my family's name, all of it depends on silence." She stepped closer, her heels sinking softly into the sand. "And you, Maria, are the loudest secret I've ever had." The driver pulled Maria to her feet, forcing her to stand. Her legs trembled violently, but she fought to steady herself. Desperation flared in her chest. "I swear I'll never say a word. I'll disappear, I'll go back home." Aisha's laugh was low, chilling. "You already disappeared the moment you betrayed me, don't you see? This isn't punishment, it's erasure." She nodded to the driver. Maria's eyes widened. "No, please," she shrieked, thrashing wildly. But the desert swallowed her cries, carrying them into the emptiness. The men dragged her further from the car, to a shallow pit already dug in the sand. Maria's knees buckled as she realized what it was. "No, no, please." She dropped to the ground, clinging to the driver's leg, sobbing uncontrollably. "I have a family too, a mother, a little sister who depends on me. Don't do this." The driver's face was grim but unmoved. He shoved her forward, her body collapsing beside the pit. Maria clawed at the sand, the grains sharp beneath her nails. "I beg you, don't bury me alive, please, not like this." Aisha watched, her arms folded. The moonlight caught her face, casting it in silver and shadow. She was calm, eerily calm. "End it," she said. The struggle was short. Maria's screams rang out one final time before they were muffled, swallowed by the dunes. The men worked quickly, efficiently, shoveling sand until the earth was smooth again, the pit erased as though it had never been. The desert was silent once more. Aisha stood still for a long moment, staring at the spot where Maria had been. There was no triumph in her face, only a cold emptiness. She turned without a word, stepping back into the car. "Drive," she said. And just like that, Maria was gone. Back at the villa, Khalid's rage grew like wildfire. He searched the city for days, scouring hospitals, airports, police stations. No one had seen Maria, no trace of her remained. "She left you," Aisha told him, her voice sharp with false sympathy. She took your money and disappeared. That's what these girls do. But Khalid's heart rejected the lie. He could feel the truth gnawing at him, even if he could never prove it. The hollow ache in his chest was unbearable, a grief without closure. Maria's family in the Philippines waited for her calls that never came. Letters went unanswered. Eventually, the money she used to send stopped arriving. Her mother sat by the window every evening, praying to see her daughter return. Her sister grew up with unanswered questions, holding on to the faint hope that maybe Maria had simply chosen another life somewhere far away. But deep down, they both knew something terrible had happened. As months passed, the story of Maria faded into whispers. Servants who once worked in the villa spoke cautiously, hinting at her sudden disappearance but never daring to confront the truth. Dubai's skyline glittered, indifferent. Life went on. The city that had promised Maria a future had instead devoured her. For Aisha, the secret was buried as deeply as Maria. Outwardly, she remained flawless, the elegant wife, the devoted mother, the respected woman of her community. No one saw the blood on her hands, hidden beneath diamonds and silk. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was still, she thought she could hear it. A woman's scream carried by the desert wind. And in those moments, she would clutch her robe tighter, close her eyes, and whisper to herself, "It had to be done.